Hi YouTube, how you going? Welcome to this first video in the Planning Your Crypto Mining Build series. This series is specifically created for people who are looking to make the dive into crypto mining and don't really know where to start. It's going to be a multi-part series that looks at a lot of different things, from understanding your budget to determining what to mine, and then also what you might need to buy to build out your first crypto mining rig. So in this video series, I thought I'd start at the very beginning, which is understanding your budget, because you do need to understand how much you need to spend before you can make any of the other decisions that are going to follow. So through this lens, I've broken it up into 4 buckets. Now, look, I understand some people certainly go and invest a lot more than 10,000 Australian dollars or more than 7.2 US, but at least in my experience from the people that I've spoken to and the people who I see in the crypto mining community, for those who are just looking to get started, the majority of people do fall into this kind of one of these 4 categories. And I'd say if you were looking to invest more than $10,000, you're probably a little bit more advanced in your journey anyway, and this video might not necessarily be for you. But if you've arrived here, you're looking at getting started into crypto mining and you're thinking, hey, how much do I need to spend? I hope this video and some of the research and knowledge that I've gained is of value to you. So as I said, I've broken it into 4 main buckets, and we're going to run through each of those now, starting with the sub 2,000 Australian or around 1,600 US. Now, I typically define this as people who are repurposing gaming PCs or potentially building a micro rig from scratch, and they fall into that hobbyist bracket, and we'll cover a little bit more about what that means in a second. But the next step up, if you get to between 2,000 to 5,000 Australian dollars, or between 1.6 and 3.6 US, you step up to that level where you're potentially using a mid to higher end gaming PC, or you're starting to get into the budget, the area of budget where you can afford to build a smaller mining specific rig. Next bucket up, 5 to 10,000 Aussie, or between 3.6 and 7.2 US. Now you've definitely stepped out of the realm of buying a gaming PC or using your gaming PC. You're at that size where you're going to be building a small to medium rig, but the economies of scale that come from having multiple GPUs and doing something specific really start to shine. So again, this is going to be a custom built mining rig in this situation, and it's going to be dedicated to mining, as opposed to being something that you might use for mining and gaming on occasion. The final bracket, again, through the lens of people who are kind of new to this game and are looking to get started, again, medium to large mining rigs, given the context of the audience that we're talking about. I know there's people out there with much larger rigs than what we're going to cover in this bucket, but for someone who's getting started, if you're investing 10,000 Aussie or 3.2 US or more, you're starting to get in that realm where you can build a medium to large mining rig, at least one to get you started. At this budget, though, you do find some people who don't want to mine with GPUs and instead want to use ASICs. So those who are not familiar with ASICs, it's an application-specific integrated circuit, and it's designed to do one thing and one thing only. Bitcoin is dominated by ASICs. You can also get ASICs that are now mining Ethereum. You also see ASICs mining things like Dogecoin as well. Now, that's not the focus of the video because they typically are a much larger outlay for one machine. And they also only do one thing, whereas with GPUs, at least you can kind of switch and chop and change what you're mining. But I did just want it to be aware that does exist for someone who has more than that 10K Aussie budget or more than 7.2 US. If you can find them, you may start to see some people considering ASIC mining rigs as well. But back to kind of breaking it down further through each of these buckets. So if we move back to our smaller miners, those in the sub 2K or 1.6K US, the way I like to think about it, they are very much hobbyists. So they're going to have a smaller focus on ROI. And that's basically just because they're either repurposing their gaming PC, or if they're building something that's quite small with maybe only 1 or 2 GPUs, they're making a couple of dollars a day basically. And really, for most people at that level, maybe it's just something that interests them. They want to understand more about crypto, and that's where they want to start. And potentially, if you're at that smaller end of the spectrum, you might decide to do more speculative mining, where instead of mining something like Ethereum, where hey, I'm going to make a few dollars a day and the price of Ethereum may or may not go up, they might take a little bit of a bigger chance, mine something that's flying under the radar, and think, hey, if I can acquire a large number of these coins and that coin or token ends up going up quite significantly, then that's where I'm going to get my return on investment, rather than the day-to-day returns that you see a lot of people kind of make their investment decisions off when you go to something like whattomine.com and plug in the GPUs that you're looking at buying. Between that 2 to 5,000 Aussie mark, 1.6, 3.6 US, I certainly feel that most people do move into that bracket of giving consideration to ROI. You are starting to invest actual money beyond, maybe having a great gaming PC. And you do want to understand, hey, what's my ROI going to be like? But because of the smaller outlay, there is a more minimal risk. Equally as well, if everything goes pear-shaped, you might still have, a really good gaming PC that you can use yourself, or at least be able to sell off the graphics cards and recoup a fair amount of your investment, at least in today's market. Now, the next bracket up, 5K to 10,000 Aussie, 3.6 to 7.2K US, definitely going to have a stronger focus on ROI. You're definitely going to be giving increased consideration to scalability as well. So while today you might only be able to buy a handful of cards, you might want to plan your system out so that you can support a much larger number of GPUs in the future, 6, 8, 10, etc. Now, the next bucket up again, definitely I'd imagine if you're investing more than this, you're going to be giving strong consideration to ROI, and you're also going to be giving consideration to that scalability as well. Potentially also at this bucket, you might actually have enough of a budget to move into multiple rigs. So some people do have a preference of building, a 12 GPU rig. Other people prefer to have multiple smaller rigs of like 6 or 8 cards. That's a personal preference. Now, we'll cover that in a little bit more detail next. So with each of these kind of rough budgets, what are you kind of looking at? Well, certainly at that sub $2,000 level, potentially, as I said, you're getting a gaming PC or repurposing your existing one. If that's the case, you're probably just using whatever GPU you have. But if you are going out there to buy, you're probably looking around 1 to 2 GPUs tops. Now, that can be something like 1660s or a 3060 Ti. Now, 3060 Ti's, I'm aware that they're a low hash rate card, and don't worry, we will cover that in a later video if you're interested. But at least in the Australian market, a 3060 Ti is around $1,000. Typically, I did manage to pick a couple up at $800 and $900 respectively. So you could squeeze into GPUs at that price point if you're looking at 3060 Ti's. 1660s are around $600-700 in Australia, so certainly you could get 2 for that budget. And as I mentioned, you also might have people who are speculative mining, and if you've got a semi-decent CPU, you might also look to leverage that as well. Now, certainly if you look at the returns for something like Monero, for those of you who aren't aware, Monero is kind of the predominant CPU mineable coin. You're not going to be raking in a huge amount each day, but there are some CPU-focused coins that are a little bit more speculative in nature, and again, some people turn to that. Now, obviously, none of this is investment advice. Just kind of talking through some of the ideas and permutations that people are going through to give you a sense of what I found and what you might also find of value to you as you consider your crypto mining build. So that next bucket up, 2 to 5 Aussie, you're definitely in the range where you can get 2 to 5 GPUs now. Again, depending on what GPU you're buying and availability, but certainly in Australia, 1660s readily available around the $600 to $700 mark, as I said. Now, whether that's a good buy or not, we won't discuss that today, but you could theoretically get somewhere between 2 to 5 GPUs. 3060 Ti's as well, a little bit more expensive. They do have the low hash rate that we have to consider as well, but it is feasible to land somewhere between 2 and 5 GPUs in my opinion. Now, I also looked on Newegg in the US. Again, availability of cards is the large differentiator here. As long as they're available, it is feasible to be able to do that. Once you step up to that 5 to 10K bracket Aussie or 3.6 to 7.2 US, you're looking at 5+ lower end GPUs, so something like those 1660s, or potentially like, hey, I'd rather have a smaller number of higher end cards, so something like 3080s or 3080 Ti's, in which case, depending on where you land on that spectrum between 5 and 10K, you might get 2 to 3, you might be able to get even one more if you're lucky. The final bucket, again, that 10K plus, you're definitely looking at, as I said, potentially before, multiple mining rigs. If you're going the multiple mining rig side of things, I'd imagine that you're getting, a lower end GPU. Why might you prefer to get more lower end GPUs than a smaller number of higher end GPUs? Well, I guess if you think about it, imagine a 1660 Super or 1660 Ti, at least in Australia, is $700. If you bought 6, it's going to take you a lot smaller amount of time or shorter amount of time to be able to mine enough Ethereum or mine enough of another cryptocurrency to be able to buy a 7th. Whereas if you need to, basically save the crypto that you mine until you've got another 2 or 2.5 grand, it's just going to take you more time. So some people do prefer to be able to basically stack cards quicker, get more cards at least early on, and then maybe when they've got a larger number of cards mining, they do kind of flip over and preference the higher end cards. But if you want to preference the higher end cards from the get-go, anywhere between 3 to 5, potentially even more. Again, it really depends on availability and budget. But look, a lot of these cards are kind of in that 2K, 2.5K plus range. And if you do the maths there, you get 3 at 2K, you got 6K done right there. Maybe if you do 5, 10K. So again, it just depends on the availability, but typically that's kind of where I see most people getting started. So as for me, as I've kind of gone through this process, I gave a lot of consideration to where I wanted to sit and what I was comfortable investing. And I landed here in the 2 to 5K range. So definitely at that smaller end of the scale, but do have some kind of crossover into some of these other buckets. So I do give a lot of consideration to the ROI. I'm not just doing this for fun, and I do want to be able to scale. So, it's not just thinking about what I mine today. It's thinking about, hey, what do I want to mine in the future? How many GPUs do I want to grow to beyond that kind of 2 to 5 range? Additionally, I also kind of fall a little bit into the first bucket as well, because I do like the idea of speculative mining, and I'll talk to that in some of the other videos. So I have, and you'll see this in the upcoming video, so I've actually invested in a higher end CPU than you would typically see in a mining rig. But that's because I do want to do some CPU mining specifically. So with that budget, as I mentioned, I'm, kind of in that crossover of, 1 or 2 different buckets there, but I'm not just using a higher end gaming PC. I am going to build something specific. I have given consideration to the ROI, and I have also given some thought to scaling this system in time. But look, I hope that was really helpful for you out there who are looking to get started and wondering how much do I actually need to invest, if I'm looking at building a crypto mining rig. Obviously, there's a lot of other sources of information out there, but this is kind of what I've collated and what I see. If you've gone through this process yourself, you've got some alternate views or opinions, comment down below. I'd love to hear what everyone else thinks about this and where you landed when you planned out your crypto mining rigs. Also hit that like button if you enjoyed this content, and hit subscribe because there's certainly more videos coming. Thanks for watching.